Welcome everyone to this session on learning for social transformations that builds on the Summit of the Future. And we've called this, put this special session together, drawing upon a number of the partners who are part of a longer term partnership that led into the Summit of the Future back in September in New York at UN headquarters, and that are following through in various ways. And today's session is intended to reflect that that process. We approached the Summit of the Future not as the goal line, but as the starting line, as indeed it is, for efforts that need to be made to more successfully deal with the challenges facing the world, and with our being greatly behind on so many of the international agreements first formulated, a decade ago, really, in 2015, the Paris Agreement, the UN's Agenda 2030, and the Sustainable Development Goals. One of the things that's become increasingly clear in the last few years is that we're greatly behind the targets and achievements and the pace at which those agreements need to be met to stave off sort of serious complications for the world, to put it mildly, and for human societies and for frankly all life on Earth, our sort of kindred species that we share the Earth with. And so we began to think about how we could contribute to the discussion at the Summit of the Future this year by focalizing in particular, and here, by the way, in this first slide is an overview, is a look at all of the speakers in this session. And those who haven't joined us will be joining us shortly. And they're all from the partners that you can see there sort of in the middle strip. And those partners are themselves were part of the consortium of partners who came together for our event, focusing on how we move from good ideas to action and impact, and how do we mobilize the outcomes of the Summit of the Future. Now, the outcomes of the main outcomes of the Summit of the Future, by the way, you can see that includes also some partners who aren't here in this session today, but their partnership remains ongoing with those of us in this consortium. And this is one step among a number of them that are going to be occurring now late in 2024 and throughout the year of 2025, where we're going to be moving further and further in the direction of actually trying to implement ideas, take those best ideas and find ways in which we can have impact on the ground at community level, in contexts around the world. And so we, towards the end of the session, I'll tell you a little bit more about those plans. But these were the partners that came together in New York. And frankly, we decided when we thought about the outcomes of the Summit of the Future to define the outcomes in terms of the major normative documents, the Pact for the Future, and its normative instruments as annexes to the Pact, including the Global Digital Compact and the Declaration on Future Generations. And more specifically, we framed our session on the ambitions articulated in the Declaration on Future Generations. And we built a session around another document, which is the Wales Protocol for Future Generations, which attempts to articulate how we can, in fact, realize in practice, in a variety of contexts, the ways in which those ambitions in the Declaration on Future Generations can be realized. And it does that by proposing three scopes of engagement: the sort of citizen level and community level, the national and state level, and the intergovernmental, the international and the intergovernmental and multilateral level. And in the Wales Protocol, there are proposals, 5 proposals broadly under each of these areas, at the level of governments, at the level of people and communities. And I'm not going to read these aloud right now, but a lot of these have significant sort of implications for learning, and learning has significant implications for how these goals and how these proposals can be realized. And that makes, I think, this session today a very apt one for thinking about a continuation of the examples that we brought up in New York. So we provided, we looked through the lens of the Wales Protocol on Future Generations developed by the Future Generations Commissioner's Office in Wales, the only such Future Generations Commissioner to, although that seems to be changing, that has a sort of a significant, almost ministerial level post to be monitoring how public bodies are preparing for future generations and the needs of future generations. And in our event, we focused on four broad areas that intersected with these proposals from the Wales Protocol. How do we shape better national and international policies and capacities for future generations? How do we meet urgent needs in the present while also finding viable long-term solutions? And how do we build 21st century skills to, as the Montpelle Rampelle and Nolita from the Club of Rome formulated it, to liberate the future? And then finally, we had a fourth focus on ethical AI and technical and technological learning resources, educational resources for a flourishing future. We're going to hear some resonance from these focuses and what was brought up in New York, I think, in this meeting, in this session, but we're also looking to go beyond that. Now, speaking of going beyond, I've already gone 2 minutes beyond my own introductory time. So I propose now to stop sharing my screen and to suggest that we do this. I have to go out. That we move forward with the first of what will be 3 rounds of panel discussions, beginning with Rod Sharar, the program coordinator from the Club of Rome. And the floor is yours, Rod.
Would I be able to share my screen?
I hope so. Do you see the share button activated down below?
Can we see the screen?
Yes.
Oh, it's
Well, now it's black, but there was something there before. Okay.
yeah, I'm really sorry. I'm not sure why the image suddenly became like this. Maybe I should try again.
Okay. While we're waiting for Rod to sort that out, I'll just mention that we're typically going to have 3 rounds of 3 panelists each, followed by a few minutes of questions after each 3 speakers. And then we have a segment at the very end of this session where we want to open up the discussion for more dynamic interactive Q&A with all of the participants here. Over to you again, Rod.
I'm not going to waste time fixing it right now, so maybe just I will go ahead. So good afternoon, morning, evening to everybody present here. It's a privilege so my intervention will first start with introducing the No Limits to Learning report to the Club of Rome, because this report explores how humanity can address today's global challenges by transforming the way we learn. It provides a pathway to bridge the gap between where we are now and where we need to be in the face of increasingly complex crises. So the report identifies the human gap, the distance between our capacity to impact Earth systems and our ability to understand and address the consequences, whether social, economic, or environmental. This gap highlights a systemic problem. We tend to learn retrospectively, only after a crisis occurs. But in today's interconnected world, we don't have the luxury of waiting for crises to learn. To bridge this gap, we need proactive learning that allows us to decouple human prosperity from material growth before ecological collapse and maintain peace and stability without having to learn from the devastation of conflict. So this brings us to transformative learning. How do we build a civilizational capacity for learning? So currently, much of our learning is maintenance learning, which focuses on sustaining progress from past experiences. While valuable, this approach is no longer sufficient. Um, so No Limits to Learning calls for innovative learning that is anticipatory, meaning enables us to prepare for the future possibilities and shield society from learning by shock, and participatory, ensuring that all parts of society, not just those in power, engage in shaping the future. These approaches empower society to select desirable paths and actively work towards them. So this is one of the quotes from No Limits to Learning. It is not enough that we makers are anticipatory when the resolution of global issues depends on the broad-based support from a critical mass of people. So this brings me to the 4 pillars of learning. So we have the report outlines 4 pillars of learning to support this transformation. We have anticipation, preparing for the future by understanding its multiplicity. We have participation, actively engaging diverse voices for inclusive societal processes. Autonomy, encouraging independent thinking and trusting individuals to make positive decisions for the future. And then integration, combining knowledge and perspectives from multiple disciplines to address complex challenges. These pillars provide a framework for bridging this human gap and fostering a learning society. What is preventing this societal learning then? Despite these principles, several challenges prevent societal learning from flourishing, reconciling different anticipatory views in a world dominated by facts, profits, and vested interests. Complexity. And autonomy, when unchecked, can lead to isolation, threatening cooperation and peace. So we must address these barriers to create a society capable of transformative learning. How do we make transformating learning work then? To make societal learning effective, the report emphasizes the roles of values such as emotional intelligence, art, cultural identity, in reconciling diverse worldviews, systems thinking to create spaces for critical thought and participation across all societal levels, the ability to dance with scale, balancing analysis and synthesis to overcome inaction. Lastly, the report showcases real-world examples such as literacy programs and educational use of mass media to demonstrate how innovative learning can help humanity bridge the human gap and thrive as a learning society. Sorry, I have video here, but it's kind of malfunctioning, so I'll stop sharing and move on to, so this would be the 45th anniversary of No Limits to Learning report that was made to the Club of Rome. And 45 years after its release, No Limits to Learning of the Club of Rome, alongside the Fifth Element program of the Club of Rome, and the WEC network has launched a new global call for action, which is No Limits to Hope. This initiative aims to inspire educators, learners, and citizens to transform educational paradigms and foster a mindset that can address the challenges humanity faces today. From environmental degradation to social inequality, our crises demand a radical change in how we think and how we learn. No Limits to Hope seeks to catalyze this shift by exploring collaborative learning and problem-solving methods, promoting a fairer, healthier world. As Aurelio Petti, a founding member of the Club of Rome, noted in No Limits to Learning, progress is often heretic and haphazard. with little understanding of the true consequences of our actions. He posed a critical question: can we bridge the human gap before tragedy overtakes us? His optimism lay in humanity's innate learning ability, fueled by vision, creativity, and moral energy. Today, No Limits to Hope builds on this legacy. Its objectives are very clear. We want to catalyze cultural change to create equitable opportunities in a healthier planet. We want to facilitate transformative learning, using education to inspire innovation and align knowledge with action. Revisiting the 1979 report to address modern challenges and empower educators to drive global change. By reshaping our relationship with time, nature, and each other, No Limits to Hope builds on the foundation led by No Limits to Learning to chart a path forward, ensuring humanity's ability to not just to survive, but to thrive. These initiatives remind us that the answers to our greatest challenges lie in our ability to transform how we learn and how we act. By embracing anticipatory, participatory, and innovative learning, we can bridge the human gap, align knowledge with action, and create a world where progress is both meaningful and sustainable. Let us take this opportunity to move from learning by crisis to learning by design together, and we can foster systemic change needed for a more just, equitable, and hopeful future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rod. And a lot to think about there, and we'll see whether we have any specific questions that arise in the room in response to those really important initiatives that you've brought up. I'd like to now turn the floor over to Karima Kadoui, the co-founder and executive director, president of the 10 Community Foundation for Human Development. So with no further ado, please, Karima, join us. Can you hear us, Karima? If there is a technical,
Can you hear me now?
Yes, can hear you now.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much. Oh, I'm so delighted to be here. I'm actually talking to you from a village up in the mountains in Shawan, and with the people from the villages, several villages, and with the director of the school, we're having a very similar conversation, which is quite extraordinary. I will start by resonating with what Rad said. And oh, okay. Now can you see me? Now that you hear me, can you see me? Okay, good. Great. So I will start with a question. And that question was asked to me by the Minister of Education. And the question was, how can we co-create conditions for transformation, for an emerging and organic process of transformation, without denaturing the humanity essence of that process? That was quite a question, because the question in itself beholds the seed and the fruit of its answers. The question in itself, when it's asked at a level of governance, such a level of governance, is a manifestation and expression of transformation. The classical transformation is thought in terms of implementation. How do we implement to transform? But here the minister is saying we're having a feuille de route, a roadmap. It is a framework, but how do we create conditions for all different expressions of that feuille de route that are contextualized, that emanate from the imminent potential of every single region in Morocco, every single province, and every single school in Morocco. And furthermore, how can we do that with the villages, with the neighborhoods, with the communities that surround the schools? Today, we were sitting in the village and with the director of a school and members of the different villages and with the youth from the villages. And the director was asking the same questions, that how today with the structural challenges that we have, how do we change the conditions? And then we shared stories, said, instead of looking how we are going to go and create together a future, how about if we bring that future to the present? How about if we start looking for the beauty that already exists, that already is, that is already expressing and manifesting that future that we're looking for? Let's go back to our communities, and let's go back with these questions to our schools. And in that core reflection and in that core creation, we are experiencing something quite extraordinary, which is the dissolvance of distinctions. It is the villages and the neighborhoods and the school coming together, sharing the questions and growing the questions. And those questions and that process is facilitated by the governance bodies at the province level and at the regional level. So at the same time that the process is reflected at the national and regional level, at the highest level of the governance body of the education system, and that in a couple of weeks, we are going to be training facilitators in the education system, 135 facilitators all over Morocco, where these facilitators are asked to co-create the conditions with the schools and with their respective directorates in order for these processes to emerge from the different contexts in our education system. What are the challenges? Well, these are not the first facilitators that are being trained. There's already been 94 facilitators that have been trained, and they're all heads of service, pedagogic service, support services. The process and what was outstanding is that process very, very quickly became understood as facilitating with the spirit, facilitating with a focus on the human relationship, facilitating with the trust in our humanity. And when that language of trusting our humanity, looking for the beauty in our system, is starting to diffuse and grow in our system, the system started to transform, to create its own conditions and self-facilitate its conditions for transformation. It became a metamorphic transformation, a transformation that emanates from the potential. This process is beholding its own resilience factors and its own sustainability factors, because it is essential in its quality. It is recognized first as a process of a humanizing education system. It is vibrating with the potential of human beings to trust in our humanity and to express that trust in the very structure of our governance systems, of the education systems, be it in the education or the higher education, or be it in other societal. So what is the learning here? We are learning to co-create the conditions for the transformation of our system, beholding, recognizing and realizing the beauty that there is in the system and the humanity that we share and that is expressed in the system. And that is, so this process that is happening at a national level, but also how does it manifest and is reflected on the local level? Well, there are different dynamics, because what is reflected at the governance level, at the local level, it is reflected beyond the school. Beyond the school. It's reflected with the school and the villages and the neighborhoods. So the education system becomes an ecosystem, no longer the system, but a broader ecosystem. in that process, with a growing language of a humanizing education system, we are becoming a society that learns to learn, to create its conditions for transformation process, beholding the factors of resilience and beholding the factors of sustainability of this process of transformation. I don't know if I'm past my time or not.
You're right, pretty much on the 6-minute mark now. So congratulations, you're the first one to do that, that includes me. So we'd like to, but we will have openings for questions, I hope. And so thanks so much for sharing from your experiences with thinking. I'd like to now invite Francois Tadi to address the question of, how we can co-construct the future with and for future generations. So welcome, Francois.
Thank you so much. I hope you hear me well. Basically, I think, we were among the happy few to be present during the General Assembly Future Summit. And for me, there is several lessons to be taken from there. And one of which I think was eloquently stated by one of the young participants there. She said, we want to learn to be the change we want to see in the world. So I think for me, that was a very powerful statement. So, how can we co-design the future of learning with learners that want to be the change that they want to see in the world? Is something which for me is really important. And it resonates with the declarations for the future that was signed by every member state, which basically say that on one side, we have to see that artificial intelligence benefits truly everyone. And on the other side, we have to co-design the future with the next generations, starting with the ones that are currently present. So, how do we empower those generations? A couple of years before, the UN Secretary General, during the Transforming Education Summit, I'd say something which still resonates with me. He basically said there is 4 ways to interact with youth. The first is to ignore them. The second is to pretend to listen to them. And he said the UN and many other organizations have done 1 and 2 for much too long. The third way was to have a dialogue with youth, and he was just having it. And he said, this is a good step, but that's not enough. We need to move to the 4th level, which is to co-construct the future with youth. And so having, some experience, at least locally in Paris, on co-designing many things with youth, from, learning environments, diplomas, buildings, and, all sorts of places that empower the young learners, we took those 2 things very seriously. And so we are trying to reflect on what should be the future of learning. If you look at the past of learning, the past of education system, the past of universities, they've co-evolved with national boundaries and with the people that were in power. So the people that were in power wanted a system to reproduce their position in the elite and make sure that, typically their sons, because they were typically men, would be part of the elite. So universities were designed by, rich, educated white men for the next generations of rich, educated white men. And so, if we were to redesign the future of learning with youth, we have to be much more inclusive today. Typically women should definitely be part of the conversation. And I'm glad that there is many women on the panel. That's a good sign. But we should also co-design with youth. And, maybe that's the sort of voices that we should find ways to hear on a systematic way. And having questioned many students on these sorts of questions, and asking them, what was the most meaningful experience you had learning about anything? Many of them have answered that Model UN was one of the most relevant things. So I guess you all know Model UN, but in case you don't, this is simulations of the United Nations where, every young participant is invited to act as if they were the ambassador of country X or Y. So they have to read lots of background material about their country and about the topic to being discussed. And then they have to make proposals and reach consensus on, what should be decision that can be taken at that level. So it's already a very meaningful learning experience. It's been going on for about 100 years because it was started during League of Nations. The question is, can we take it one step further? Because most of those conversations, even though they are very meaningful learning experience, end up in the garbage can because no one takes seriously the proposal that the young people have done for the future of the UN. So the question is, can we power their conversation with artificial intelligence so that, they can have access to the best material and they can fact check their ideas, but also, the AI can, for instance, make sure that everyone's voice was heard in an equivalent way, that the emotions were positive, and if not, that there is some process to reintegrate as positive a dynamic as possible. And a recent result on AI, which I find very relevant to our conversation, is that if you ask people to participate in a participatory citizen conference on, complex topics, and if you ask a human to make the synthesis of those conversations, or an AI to make this, and then you randomly give to the participants those summaries without telling them which one was written by an AI or which one was written by a human, what you obtain is that human says that they prefer the synthesis made by the machine than the synthesis made by the humans. So that's somewhat surprising, and it's not because AI doesn't have biases, is that humans have so many biases that AI has slightly less, and therefore participants feel that they are more heard when the machine makes the synthesis. What's interesting is that machines can make a synthesis of, say, 5 people talking, but it can also make it for 50, for 500, for 5,000, for 5 millions, or maybe tomorrow for 5 billions or 8 billions. And so it's an interesting conversation, because if we are to discuss the future of learning and the future of the planet and the future of learning for the planet, we can power those conversations and invite everyone to have their voice, but then build local synthesis and progressively build national and global synthesis. And if you do this Model UN in that culture, then you can have students' voice that is powered by the AI, so that they have better ideas, more constructive ideas, more meaningful ideas, more ideas that take into account what we know about the current state of the world. But it can make the local synthesis and then the national and then international synthesis, so that if the UN is serious in wanting to hear students' voice for the future, well, they'll have a platform where they can hear not just a token student that is invited to represent a whole generation, but the true synthesis of millions of voices from all over the world. So those are, the sort of things that I think are worth discussing and prototyping and maybe scaling. And we're trying to do these sorts of things by partnering with the United Nations University that is very interested in this very process, because its mission is to do research, education, and policy recommendation. And so if it can make this policy recommendation, having heard not only what science and expertise has to say, but also what next generations have to say, and build a synthesis of this, this is very meaningful for them. And it's also very relevant to UNESCO mission that is currently discussing how to build a UNESCO Academy for peace and sustainable future, where basically students can co-design this sort of academy, can be powered by technology, can be grounded into science, and make their voice heard from the local to the global. And so that's the sort of things which I hope we can co-design together. And I know many people in the room are already contributing to similar dynamics, and will be happy to discuss this further. Thank you so much. I don't want to be too long. I know that time is limited, and I'll have to fly at some point as well. Take care.
Thank you very much, Francois. That was I really appreciated the specificity of the examples that you brought forward, and I think a number of us are interested in the kinds of initiatives that you mentioned, and are interested in redoubling our cooperations with the Learning Planet Institute on these. So, thanks very much. I'm going to take so we can get back on track time-wise. We're about 5 minutes over right now. I'm going to hold off for the Q&A until after the second round of presenters, but I would like to mention one comment that's been made already by Yul in the chat window. You may have seen it. We seem to rely on existing models of educating large numbers of people. The current model of revenue generated for the current model is unsustainable. We must find another way to raise revenue for education. Education must be free, no property taxes and no school fees. Well, those things are maybe going to be different in different governance contexts, but nevertheless, the point I think is important. And so maybe the rest of the panelists can have this comment already in the back of their minds when we do have an opportunity to re-engage with some Q&A following the next group of speakers. So thanks very much, and I'd like to turn now to my colleague Joni Adamson, the founding director of the flagship hub of bridges at Arizona State University, who's going to be telling us about the exciting Bridges Humanities labs that they've been running. Over to you, Joni.
Thank you, Stephen, and good morning from the Sonoran Desert in North America. This panel is, asks what modalities need to be realized at different societal and governance scales in order to achieve the social transformations and focus on youth education, as we discussed in our Summit of the Future special panel. So I want to address the topic of modalities. And also I think this talk has something to say to the last comment in the chat about how we fund education. So I want to talk about a modality being innovated at the Bridges flagship hub, which is anchored in the Global Futures Laboratory at Arizona State University. Over the last 10 years, through the Humanities for the Environment Global Network, which was founded by humanities faculty at ASU, and which became a co-founder of UNESCO Bridges, we have been really thinking about the way in which we will innovate pedagogical methodologies and modalities to meet and address the SDGs and to restore faith in the SDGs. So in its first year, the flagship hub established a signature series of what we call the UNESCO Bridges Humanities Labs. And these courses are offered in collaboration with ASU's Humanities Lab. And what we are doing in these labs is innovating new pedagogical humanities inclusive methodologies that work to empower learners of all ages, especially the youth who will assume the mantle of leadership before the mid-century. So each course is co-taught by one instructor from the humanities and one instructor from another discipline to ensure that students are seeing models of interdisciplinary pedagogy and research in action. The UNESCO Bridges Humanities Labs are taught by sets of co-teachers that ask students to think deeply about the United Nations 17 SDGs and create and then we ask students to create interdisciplinary group projects designed to help achieve these goals. This semester, one of our fellow co-panelists on today's panel, Iveta Silova, and I are teaching a lab which is in collaboration with the Learning Planet Institute, headed by Francois Tadai, who just spoke. But I won't talk about that one today. I'm going to talk about a different one. So institutionally, ASU, and this is where we get to the topic of finances mentioned by the participant in the chat, ASU has been supporting humanities labs for over a decade. And this represents a huge funding commitment because these labs cost more money than regular courses because they are taught by two teachers rather than one. So each lab is also funded at a level that allows the co-teachers to bring in leading artists, writers and scientists working at the forefront of global challenges. The aim is to model for students how interdisciplinary teams work. But I want to just point out that ASU puts humanities centrally in its research. We're literally located in the center of one of the most important research laboratories, the Global Futures Lab, on the campus. And so literally sort of material, financially, at a funding level, ASU is kind of walking the walk of interdisciplinary teams that include the humanities. So today I want to focus on just one of these labs that I have co-taught entitled Energy Justice Action. My co-teacher and I asked students to focus on unjust extraction and just energy transition, with a spotlight on actions leading to transition away from coal. And we literally connected our lab to communities in Arizona that are transitioning away from coal on the Navajo Nation and in other small towns in the state. With the funding we received from the UNESCO Bridges and also the Humanities Lab, we were able to invite leading artists such as Kim Stanley Robinson, the author of Ministry of the Future. So rather than simply focusing on the science of decarbonization, we asked students to read Robinson's novel and to think about how he is imagining the transition to the near future. The novel ends in 2050, so Robinson is writing about technologies and methodologies that we have today, and this allowed students to get a bird's eye view of the next 30 years and imagine how they might participate. We also invited leading scientists from who are working on decarbonization into the lab, and so literally they were able to put Robinson's work in an imaginative sphere together with actual science that is being conducted at ASU. Our partnership with Robinson and our work in this lab led directly to the invitation that Bridges issued to Robinson to join us at the Summit of the Future special panel, where he was able to meet the Wales Commissioner for Future Generations. And that's a story on its own. I won't go into that, but that was a really wonderful outcome at the Summit of the Future that was connected to this lab. So I will provide the link to the students' outcome page for this particular lab so you can see how youth were literally working to innovate solutions for achieving just energy transition. And in addition, the lab catalyzed research collaborations between humanists at ASU and ASU's Center for Negative Carbon Emissions, where all of those scientists I just spoke about are working. And we have already been successful in landing a DOE grant, and we are currently working on 2 other active grant proposals with the DOE and NSF that focus on decarbonization. And in brief, the integration of humanists into sustainability science labs and research teams, which is one of the goals of Bridges, both at the institutional level of universities such as ASU, but also globally, will be key to restoring the faith in the SDGs, building capacity among youth, and also advancing the research that will be key to securing the future well-being of both humanists and the planet. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Joni. A lot of rich experience that you're drawing on there, and very valuable initiatives. So hope we're going to have a chance to revisit these a little bit later in the session. I'd like to now invite my other Bridges colleague, Lucy Atala from the University of Wales, Trinity St. David, and the director of the UK hub of Bridges there, to join us. So welcome, Lucy.
Thanks, Stephen. Yes, hi to everyone from Wales. So I'm taking a slightly different approach because I want to share a project as a sort of tangible example of some of the hows of moving ideas to action to impact. So the example I'd like to share is a project that's working to draw differences together so that they can find points of unity and correspondence. We're all aware that different understandings of what the world is and how it should be approached causes tensions. And currently there's one sort of dominant perspective in the world. And so what this project is asking, well, it's asking experts to relearn what they think they already know by asking what is lost when the knowledge that underpins indigenous environmental practices is excluded from global conservation strategies. So this project speaks to the hows of moving from ideas to action. It concerns learning together, explores how indigenous knowledge, particularly the knowledge of one group called the Kogi, one of 4 indigenous groups in the Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta in Colombia, can contribute to a more holistic understanding of environmental care. So one that really embraces the relational and cosmological dimensions of nature, which tend to be excluded when we talk about the environment and when we create global conservation strategies. So just a little bit of backstory then. Since the 1990s, and based on the ecosystem changes in the region, the Kogi have repeatedly warned of global environmental collapse, almost pleading for a change in damaging practices that they believe are wounding the living earth, but their calls have had limited effect. So for the Kogi, existence is governed by an invisible, intangible order and is supported by ordered thinking. This means thoughts are like seeds that shape the identity of all things. And this spiritual principle knows thoughts as a seed bank, originally birthed or thought by the original mother, from which everything emerges and takes form. So you can see this is very difficult to incorporate into conservation strategies using environmental science. But Kogi land restoration methods are deeply attuned to this principle, understanding how to reconnect damaged ecosystems to their original source thought. And by re-establishing a link to this foundational thought, an ecosystem like a forest can be restored, allowing its original order, if you like, or true identity to be reawakened. And anecdotal evidence suggests that the methods that the Kogi use are remarkably effective in restoring degraded land. So in 2019, faced with this escalating environmental degradation of their ancestral territories based on the practices of people much further afield, the Kogi decided it was time to teach a small team of non-Kogi the ancestral knowledge and practices that they've relied on for millennia to care for the world, and to find ways to, quoting them, unite in the care for our planet. So at the core of this initiative is a collaborative transdisciplinary team of Kogi knowledge holders, anthropologists, and environmental researchers on an immersive experiential learning journey, which is aiming to return degraded Kogi ancestral territories through thought laboratories, the term used by the Kogi, which will be created for the purpose of knowledge co-evolution. So we learn together on the land what the Kogi do through explanation and through deep dialogue. And this provides the opportunity for the Kogi to teach the so-called environmental experts from the global north and let's just say the global north for now, to teach their methods and techniques and their philosophies of land regeneration, and for the team to work together to co-create a framework that shows how indigenous knowledge can inform and interact with scientific approaches, and hopefully without excluding these spiritual components, these principles of that actually are echoed through a lot of different indigenous ontologies. So it's hoped that this will contribute to developing more inclusive and effective conservation strategies by actively learning together. So this is the experts relearning, learning again, opening their minds, to go back to Francois' comment about biases and assumptions, opening their minds to alternative ways of thinking about the world meaningfully and using deep dialogue. This project then challenges the prevailing epistemological hierarchies that often separate indigenous and scientific knowledge. So we're seeking instead to braid, using Kimera's term, these knowledge systems together in a way that respects their distinctiveness while recognizing the potential for mutual enrichment in respect of the living landscape. So I hope that that's been useful to hear about. This is a project that that feels the established ideas need to be rethought, taking on board properly the ideas of the other people on the planet that we share the world with. Slightly clumsy ending, but there we are.
Thanks
See, I'm
very
in
much.
time.
You were in time. Well done. Well done. And thanks so much. It's a fascinating project, and I think that it's a project from which we stand to learn as much almost at the meta level as we would from the specific cases here, as far as how that can begin to inform approaches in other contexts that try to blend together indigenous knowledge and mainstream scientific knowledge. So thanks so much for that, and I hope we have a chance to follow up with a question or two on that as well. I'd like to now invite Janani, and you'll have to excuse me if I put the emphasis on the wrong syllable.
That's fine. Yeah.
Ramanathan, the Secretary General from World Academy of Art and Science, and also, incidentally, a governing council member of the Bridges Governing Council, to join us. And the floor is yours, Janani.
Thank you, Stephen. Very happy to be here. And Gary couldn't join us today, and so I'm here in his place. When calculators were first introduced in Indian banks in the 1970s, the accountants in the banks, they started to use it. But initially, after totaling a column of figures, they would add the numbers once again, this time mentally, just to be sure that the calculator had got it right. We are in such a position with AI now. We do use it, but many do so with some reservation, caution, doubt, and there sure are reasons for that. But I would like to focus on one issue that can be significantly addressed by technology, including AI, the quantitative gap in education. We really have no chance of bridging this gap without technology. 250 million children and youth are out of school, and there is a shortage of 44 million teachers worldwide. So it is not possible to make affordable quality learning available to all without the use of internet and communication technology, ICT, and AI. Take India, for example. India's gross enrollment ratio is 26%. The government of India aims to raise it to 50% by 2035. Now, this requires creating an additional 35 million vacancies in institutions of higher education. How can this be achieved? How can we fund it, get the infrastructure ready, find the teachers? At present, over 30% of teaching positions are vacant in Indian universities. We are unable to fill existing positions. How do we multiply the number of teachers? It is possible for the first time ever to expand our system infinitely using ICT to provide everyone, anytime, anywhere in the world with the means to acquire an education that is affordable, self-paced, interactive, personalized, transdisciplinary, contextual, relevant. I'll mention a few situations that make these terms come to life. There is a 17% literacy rate gap between men and women in India. Girls and boys are at par when it comes to enrollment in primary school, but the gap develops steadily after that through high school, graduation, and beyond. The odds are just stacked against young women, especially in semi-urban and rural regions. The reasons can be financial, social, cultural, religious, political, Now, a digital device and basic internet connectivity can be a lifeline for these girls. And another example that I would like to mention here is the World Academy. It has conducted several workshops at the Inter-University Center in Dubrovnik in Croatia. There was one workshop on leadership in 2015. We had several WAS fellows and many other guest speakers. And together we looked at various facets of leadership, decision making, training others to lead, and so on. We had online participants, and at the end of the 4-day workshop, we received a mail from someone who had attended it from a refugee camp in West Africa. Now, this course, it explored the characteristics common to leaders in business, politics, academia, and the methods by which their characteristics can be consciously developed by all. In his mail, this person told us that the course helped him navigate life in the refugee camp and assist others there. This was not something that we expected. On another occasion, we had a representative from Open University UK, who was actually part of the second WAS Future Education Conference that took place in Rome in 2017. And she shared with us a group photo of some 25 people. Now, the university had created an open online course on handling Ebola outbreaks. This online course had been taken by the paramedic staff working in an Ebola treatment center in an African country. All of them had taken the course using one phone that they shared between them, one by one. Then they had taken this group photo using the same phone and sent it to the university. These are just a few instances where ICT can be a lifeline to the disadvantaged, to those in refugee camps and war zones, and increasingly during climate-related disasters. And by that, I don't just mean cyclones or floods, because every year schools are closed for weeks in New Delhi, the capital of India, because the air quality is not safe for children. Technology is definitely not the complete solution, but it can be the tool for this infinite multiplication of resources that we need to provide education for all. In 2012, when MOOCs became famous, there was much criticism about how it was mass manufacturing courses and impacting on the quality of learning. Today, with AI-powered technology, much of what was cited as weakness of technology-enabled learning can be overcome. In fact, it is making possible what otherwise cannot be done physically by the conventional methods. So I feel there are two things that we need to do urgently. One is to train teachers to use ICT and AI and teach them to teach the students to use it, not to let AI do their work for them in a way that prevents the students from developing, but so our youth can develop higher order thinking skills. And another is to bridge the digital divide. Then one of the visions of the founders of the World Academy of Art and Science was to create a world university. Now that can be fulfilled, and the goal of inclusive, equitable, quality education and lifelong learning opportunities for our future generations can be fulfilled. Thank you. With this, I'll finish the first round. Over to you, Steve.
Thanks very much, Janani. These are really crucial points that you're raising, and thinking about the how of we can do this. I think is part of the ambitions with certainly of the entire of WAS, but also a lot of the organizations that are coming together, beginning to think about how we can bring sort of force multiplication as well as creative solutions and ideas about how we can actually band together to achieve what are certainly many common ambitions between Learning Planet Institute, between WASP, between Bridges, Club of Rome, ASU, Global Futures, University of Wales, and so forth. So I want to thank you for putting it into that context in a way that sort of makes it more intelligible or easy to understand. the scale of the challenge, but also the possibilities for redressing the current situation. Iveta, I don't know if you're there. We're still a few minutes behind schedule, so I'm making an executive decision as the moderator to cut my segment in the next round and go to Q&A as soon as possible after we've had a chance to hear from Iveta. But that pushes Iveta up a few minutes. And so, Iveta, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear, and I'm here and ready to go.
Okay, great. So now over to my colleague at ASU, Iveta Silova. It's all yours. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Stephen, and warm greetings to everybody today from Sonoran Desert in Arizona. I'm here with Joni Adamson. So it's real honor to join this gathering of visionary thinkers and change makers as we delve into what learning must become to create a flourishing world for future generations. And as many of you have mentioned already, we do stand today at a crossroads. So the crisis that we face, climate instability, biodiversity loss, escalated inequalities, demand transformative action. And learning in this context is a lifeline that can guide us forward, but not the kind of learning that has been institutionalized through modern schooling for the last 2 centuries, not the one that is confined to textbooks only, and not the one that is limited by institutional walls. The learning that we need must listen deeply to the rhythms of the earth, to the wisdom of the marginalized communities, and to the courage of young people envisioning what we cannot yet see. It is learning that disrupts the dominant narratives, that recognizes interdependence across the different cultures, people, between people and planet, and a type of learning that nurtures care and collective action in the face of uncertainty. But this type of learning also requires ongoing unlearning, as some of my fellow colleagues already mentioned. To confront the future, we must unlearn this entrenched story of separation, the idea that humans are apart from nature, or that progress is a one-way street of growth and consumption. Instead, we need education systems that can reweave the fabric of our interdependent coexistence, integrating diverse knowledge systems, including indigenous and community-based wisdom, alongside scientific and technological expertise. The arts and humanities hold a transformative power here, enabling us to feel deeply, but also imagine boldly, something that techno-scientific solutions may not necessarily enable us to do. One example of such transformative learnings that I wanted to mention really briefly is a Turn It Around project that we have collaborated with many of the colleagues here on the Zoom as well. It's a youth-powered initiative that uses socially engaged arts to challenge the paradigms that created the climate crisis. It gathers youth visions and voices of learning futures and invites policymakers and educators into dialogue to rethink our assumptions and to reimagine and rebuild the futures together. Projects like this remind us that education is not static. It's a living, dynamic process open to everybody and inviting everybody to engage. And thank you, Joni, for posting the link in the chat so you can explore this project a little bit more and maybe also contribute. It's still ongoing. So, but how do we move from ideas into action? The frameworks that we discussed today, the Pact of the Future, the Declaration on Future Generations, and the Global Digital Compact, they offer excellent blueprints for transformative change. But their success, however, really hinges on aligning education to their principles, the principles that they envision. One way this is already happening is through our collaborative several collaborations that are already ongoing between our networks. But one that I want to highlight is called G-Forces, Global Futures Oriented Research Collective on Education for Sustainability, which brings together actually all of the networks that are here on the call, on the Zoom call already, but also more networks, bringing together scholars, practitioners, and communities from across the globe that often work in parallel and sometimes even in competition. So this project, which is funded by NSF, envisions and creates infrastructure for collaboration across different networks, basically creating a network of networks that allows us to collaborate in ways that transcend the silos and allows us to address the most complex challenges with a shared vision and a collective strengths. And in the spirit of collaboration and co-creation, I'm excited to invite you to contribute to the inaugural collaborative works that we are launching called Key Insights on Education for Planetary Futures. This initiative synthesizes urgent and innovative ideas in education for planetary sustainability, creating a resource that could inspire policymakers, practitioners, and the broader public. Our aim is to publish these insights ahead of Climate Week in 2025 and COP30 in Brazil, ensuring that these insights can inform the global conversation shaping our collective futures. We welcome your contributions by January 20, and we hope that this opportunity will create a movement of transformation. And it's meant to be an inclusive process that crowdsources the insights that we will then curate collectively as well. So it's an opportunity for younger scholars and youth activists and established scholars to contribute to this visioning exercise. So as we leave this gathering and continue to work our work together, I invite us to reflect on the role of learning as a lifeline, not as an abstract exercise, but as a living bridge to the past and to the future generations. Learning is how we honor the wisdom of those who came before us, but also how we plant the seeds of the care and the courage and creativity for those who come after. We are in this really interesting space in between. And through our collective efforts, like the ones that we highlight today, the ones that my colleagues have highlighted earlier, we are reminded that the solutions we seek already exist within the connections that we forge, the voices that we elevate, and the paradigms that we challenge. So I'm really looking forward to working together to co-create futures that generations will come to cherish, not for what we have left behind, but for what and how we choose to turn it around, how we choose to turn the world around. So thank you, and let us move forward with purpose and hope. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Iveta. And the Turn It Around project is so inspiring, and the G-Forces initiative is very, very exciting for the opportunities and the potentials that it's promising to help unlock. And so I really appreciate having heard and having had a chance for you to share information about both of these. And I was wondering, now we're kind of caught up. Especially with me, I'm skipping my intervention here, and I'll integrate the most important part of that into my finishing comments, which is where we go from here. What I'd like to do is now open up space for more of a dialogue. So we've got about 20 minutes left, and I think there's any number of things that occurred to me as I was listening, and it might make sense just to begin with the thing that's most recent and ask you, Iveta, if you could just explain a little bit about the ambitions for the initiative now that will be unfolding this year under G-Forces, as far as what you hope it may be able to sort of achieve, and anything more you want to tell us about that as far as context could be helpful.
Oh, thank you so much for the opportunity to share a little bit more. So I'm very excited to lead and collaborate with my colleagues across the world on this National Science Foundation project, G-Forces, that I mentioned earlier, that is really unique because it creates a network of networks. And we still continue to operate in a world where competition reigns, and including among these absolutely amazing networks that we have created. So we, of course, create spaces where we can collaborate, but the way the academia or policy world operates, competition really, really reigns. And so this NSF project actually creates infrastructure and operational links for the network of networks to collaborate and to align our visions more purposefully and more intentionally. And we thought that it would be a really unique opportunity to begin this process by creating the key insights on education for planetary futures, where we could collectively, well, first of all, open the space for anybody to contribute to the process of envisioning how the education could be reimagined, but more importantly than kind of in a more decentralized way, create editorial teams and writing teams that can be shaping these key insights or articulating these key insights. The idea, though, is that it does not stay on the paper. The idea is that these key insights will be brought into dialogue with policymakers, but also with practitioners in education. So again, working from the middle space and connecting both the policy shifts and also the shifts in practice. And but of course, the success of this initiative will depend on participation. And I think that its power is really in this participatory, very active participatory process. So we really hope that you can contribute to that and also maybe volunteer to step in any of the roles, maybe writing some of the editing or writing some of the key insights or communicating to policymakers or practitioners or any other ways in which we can move this vision forward. But it's an opportunity for us to align the vision, align our maybe parallel visions into something that's more converging.
Right. Thanks so much. Thanks so much. And it's going to be exciting to meet with the people coming together for that later this spring. I see that Lucy has a hand up. So Lucy, do you have a question you'd like to pose or an observation?
Yeah, could I just follow on a little bit and also do a tiny bit of weaving while I go? There's some sort of connections between what people are saying, with Karima, for example, earlier on saying, you're asking us to trust humanity, which I've got to say, Karima, is very difficult at this point, for a lot of very obvious reasons that I don't need to labor on about. But at the same time, the things that have been explained here and the ideas and the possibilities that have been shared here are starting to make me feel a bit hopeful. So that's fantastic. And Iveta, the work that you're doing is fantastic, but the phrase network of networks kind of sprang into my mind because it's exactly what the Global Tapestry of Alternatives, a group, an alliance of academics wanting to really fundamentally, radically alter education, term their organization, from which the ecoversities have sprung forth, predominantly in the global south, all trying to shift education's focus away from the things that you were exactly speaking about towards caring for the world and recognizing the connection to the world and our, more than human friends that we share the world with. So there are some convergences right there. the Ecoversities group are fantastic. They're doing some great, so I'm sure you know about them, Iveta, but just, for other people, have a look. Just type in Ecoversities into the internet and you'll get a view. And also you can join the global tapestry of alternatives who are working to weave all of these ideas together and almost create a critical mass, I think, of people with already doing stuff to inspire people to work differently in other areas. So yeah, I just thought I'd weave those few things in. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Lucy. That's the very, very helpful observations. And it didn't seem to pose a question about us, so I'm going to go right over to Karima and invite her to intervene now with either a comment or a question.
Yes, thank you, Stephen. Very much in resonance to what you just said, Lucy, and before Iveta and Janani, all these really insightful and inspiring reflections and experiences, because this is what is beautiful, is that all is spoken from lived experiences. It's not something that, and coming together with all these different understandings, we are able to reveal in that between that you mentioned, Iveta, we are able to reveal the not yet thought of and the not yet imagined. Here, when I want to resonate, Lucy, with what you say, how difficult it is to trust our humanity. Yes, and that is the most extraordinary paradox we're in, because everything is telling us we cannot trust. Our education systems are built on lack of trust. We need to coerce, we need to gratify people to learn, or to punish people because they haven't learned the way we want them to learn. We have to make them compete with each other in order to be the best, and then we ask them to create societies of harmony, of flourishing, when the education system is telling them, well, I need to be better than you in order to actually just to prove my existence, the value, my very value as a human being. So all these dissonances. But what happens if we start thinking of us, each other, in the in that field where we all meet, in that confluence? Rather than conversions, we're getting to the same point. No, we are different streams, but we can stream together, be in confluence, remaining in our beautiful diversity and our beautiful variety, but at the same time confluencing together to the ocean, because this is what we do. This is what water does. And this is what us human beings are, which is humanity. Now the humanity is there. And this is exactly what a young man was telling us today in the village. He said, we were afraid. Some of us dropped out of school. We were afraid of failure. We did not know the history of a village and realized how much was already in our village. Now, when we started to realize, we're no longer afraid. And we are starting to create conditions for ourselves, for our schools, for the future generations, and recognizing and realizing the beauty there is in our village, in our villages. So this is something that is within us. This is something we might call the, I mean, isn't it beautiful that humanity, and I shared this before, and you've heard this before, Lucy, that humanity, the root of it is whom, which is earth. There is this understanding that humanity, when we say, oh, this is beautiful expression of humanity, it's always connected to love and compassion. We have this deep understanding, and it doesn't matter what culture. We have it here, different, it's very diverse in Morocco, very different cultures from province to province. But as soon as we go there, somehow we are all able to come together and to realize the extraordinary beauty there is in all coming together, liberating that creativity and that imagination. So I am, yes, thank you so much. I'm so grateful to be part of this beautiful confluence of minds and hearts.
Thank you so much, Karima. And it's always inspiring to dialogue with you. I thought this might be an interesting opportunity when we're thinking about what can be achieved. I'm thinking back to that first question that was posed, or that observation about funding for education. And it's not a complicated question in lots of ways. And it makes me think about the question, what is it that we generally mean when we're using education? What does that encompass? And of course there's formal education, informal education, higher education, primary, secondary, but there's also education that occurs through other channels completely outside of the education systems in our governments and so forth. And so, and of course, these things are going to be a bit different from one governance context to next in terms of the structures and mechanisms by which education gets funded or not funded. And but education and learning goes so far beyond those channels. And so I'm thinking a little bit here about Rod, if you would maybe be in a position to comment, because the network of network approach that we've heard a couple of times, different approaches to from different people in this session, is certainly something that the Club of Rome, that WAS, that Bridges, that Tankeen, others are all thinking about. I know, and certainly the G-Forces project is evidence of this as well. And I know that these discussions have been very, very much at the center of what's been going on in the context of the New Earth Humanity Coalition, which we're all involved in too. So, Rod, would you mind saying anything about the Earth Humanity Coalition as far as anything that we brought up so far, but thinking as well about the importance of learning and also providing for the needs of education as a mission within our understanding of knowledge production?
Yeah, of course. Thanks for the floor again, Stephen. So with the Earth Humanity Coalition, just to give a brief introduction of what it is. So the Earth Humanity Coalition is a coalition that has been formed under the umbrella of the International Decade of Sciences for Sustainable Development, which is a program that is being spearheaded by UNESCO. So under that, we formed the Earth Humanity Coalition to advance some of these very ambitious goals of the decade, where we're trying to bring in all sciences to work in coalition together for equitable futures. So for the Earth Humanity Coalition, that is exactly what we are trying to do. We are trying to understand that science cannot exist in the vacuum that it exists right now in educational institutions, in other scientific forums, and all these places. Science exists in a kind of vacuum without having conversations with other disciplines, with other spheres of knowledges and other sorts of knowledge creation. So the idea is, how can we bring together science to have these conversations with humanities, with social sciences, with businesses, and with local and indigenous knowledges? How can we have all of these spheres of knowledges kind of come together to create sustainable and regenerative futures and equitable futures? So there's so under this, the Earth Humanity Coalition is now currently working through some of the working threads of incorporating transdisciplinary dialogues, and also promoting transdisciplinary education and learning, and also trying to understand and learn from existing transdisciplinary practices all over the world, especially in the global majority, where so many people in grassroots in reality are working with the idea of transdisciplinarity without really knowing, the word, what transdisciplinary is. It's not a must that you have to know what the word transdisciplinary means for you to be working in a transdisciplinary way. So there is already so much of this practice happening at ground level. And it is for us to learn from them and to then juxtapose this learning into broader understanding, into the broader world, to enable the humanity that exists right now to have proper conversations with nature, with each other, so that we are able to understand each other better, so that we are able to use the mechanisms that are present in the world right now in terms of science, in terms of other learnings and other educational activities, so that we are able to use it, harness it to its full potential in a more just and equitable way. So this is very much the goal that the Earth Humanity Coalition and the mission that we are going forward to. We are always inviting people to come join us in our initiatives at the Earth Humanity Coalition so that we can better understand, we have better understanding from people from all over the world, from all kinds of practices, and especially engage youth into this dialogue as well. So the Club of Rome has a vast projects, has a lot of projects, and almost in all of these projects, we ensure that youth participation is involved, because this is very important to have understanding of what the youth wants for the futures that are laid out in front of us. So this is basically what the Earth Humanity Coalition wants to do. Incorporate all sorts of spheres of knowledge, break the silos that knowledge exists right now within, and pave a way for a more equitable future. Thanks, Stephen. I'll stop here.
Yeah, thanks very much. It's really important, everything that you're mentioning, and I think that for so many reasons, it's worth getting even more visibility. I think the work of all of us, but certainly in the context of the decade, what the EHC is intending to do over the next decade, we need as much visibility as possible for that, because we need more capacity. Absolutely. So I think we have time for one last sort of one or two, maybe, depending on how short they are, interventions. I'd like to follow up with Joni, if you don't mind, Joni, quickly, and ask you if, thinking about what Rod was just discussing and the sort of coalescence of the different traditions of epistemological traditions, as well as the different ways in which the sciences and the humanities have for a long time existed in parallel, but we need more convergence between them to actually deal with the scope of the challenges that we're facing. I was hoping, you mentioned a little bit about this in your earlier presentation about what's going on at ASU, but could you tell us a little bit more about the context and the unfolding efforts to bring humanities more into the center of knowledge production and sort of programmatic approaches to learning and addressing societal challenges? And here I know that you've for a long time been very central in the development of the environmental humanities and humanities for the environment. So would you mind saying a few words about that?
Yes, thank you, Stephen, and thanks to the entire panel. This really has been an incredibly inspiring panel. So each one of your talks has been amazing. At ASU, we have been developing humanities-led sustainability science for over 10 years. First, through the leadership of the Humanities for the Environment Global Alliance. This is an alliance of 8 observatories located in on 5 continents and 8 regions throughout the world. And this brings together environmental humanists in their tens of thousands from around the world. Most are associated with universities. Universities are leading in developing the environmental humanities. Something like 30 years ago, an alliance was formed at a casino in Reno, Nevada. This was the place that we had a first meeting in a casino. I just think that's still funny, where we launched this international effort to bring together artists and writers and literary analysts from around the world together into the largest organization of environmental humanists in the world. It's still with, there's sister organizations around the world. And this led to Humanities for the Environment. Humanities for the Environment wanted to sort of build on that foundation, but in a way that put project and community-facing work at the forefront. And from the beginning, our focus has been really concentrated in focusing on indigenous knowledges. So Lucy's talk was a great example of the kind of focus that Humanities for the Environment has always also really valued. And so working around the world with humanists who are in communities, co-designing and organizing projects that the communities themselves are interested in developing, and always with the idea that capacity building is really important. And so ASU has been really singular in its support of this work. So we are literally physically located at the center of the new Walton Center for Planetary Health. And that's a real commitment on the part of ASU. ASU's president has again been singular in saying we want to put the humanities, the arts, make it central to the integration into sustainability science. But as probably everyone on this panel knows, that's much harder to actually do than it is to just talk about. It's so hard to actually kind of bring the practices of the sciences and the practices of humanities disciplines together. We literally do not talk the same vocabularies. We do not use the same vocabularies. And so for 10 years, we've been sort of working together to sort of develop vocabularies that bring us together. And the Humanities Lab has been really central to this work because Rod's talk just a minute ago was so inspiring, but how are we going to do that on a practical, everyday level with students working in universities? How are we going to teach them this? So we do it by bringing them into these humanities-led labs, which are co-taught, and where they can see the literal disagreements that might sort of emerge between the instructors. And they see the instructors working those potential disagreements or coming to some sort of collaborative, ideas together, and then working to support the student teams. So we're literally working to build youth capacity for leadership for tomorrow on a really sort of basic level at the university. And the university itself has been supporting this effort, which again, it takes more financial funding to make this work. So it's a commitment on the institution's part. How can we get more universities around the world to make these kinds of commitments? That's a goal, a challenge that I think that UNESCO Bridges is working towards. And we're coming together in a network of networks. The HFE has always called itself a network of networks. So we love the work that Yvette is doing, and we're super happy to be part of the work that the network she's, bless you. And so, yeah, it is hopeful. It is inspiring. It does make you feel, as Karima just said a minute ago, it does make us feel a little bit more hopeful, a little bit more like when we look around this panel and we look at the network of networks, we can say that there are some humans that we can trust. And there are some humans that are working to build capacity among youth and are working, to help youth see themselves in the movement to make this transition. So thank you, Stephen, for asking the question.
Listen, I'm going to ask one more question, but I'm going to prepare you all before I do that. So we're going just a few minutes over, but we won't go more than another 4 minutes or so. So we'll try to wrap this up in that time frame. So I'm going to ask everybody in the panel to think about, and I'm going to turn to you, and those will be the last things we hear. One sentence, one concrete action that you think you could propose that we ought to be thinking about doing to be making learning more effective as a resource for society in terms of the challenges we need to meet for the future. So one sentence, everybody can think about what their one sentence will be while I first turn to Lucy and ask her, because I think that this project resonates with a lot of what we've heard about. If you'd mind telling us a little bit about the Coastal Tales project.
No problem. Yeah, so the Coastal Tales project is an international co-designed, co-creative project that's funded by the Belmont Forum and draws together ASU, Washington, Alaska, Dublin, and Wales to think about how the stories that we tell are helping people to adapt to the climate already changing. So it seeks to inspire a greater understanding that places heritage stories, but also some of the current stories that we're telling each other about the climate and what can we do and so on, are at the center of meeting some of the ecological and societal challenges that we're facing. So in Wales particularly, we're concerned about food sovereignty and about eating well and reducing air miles and so on. And we chose the coast as a place to start with this, because the coast is feeling the effects of climate change more readily than other areas at the moment, because the project focuses on global north locations specifically. So our colleagues in Alaska are looking at education and learning about the heritage stories of the local Inuit population and how to inspire intergenerational dialogue. Our colleagues in Dublin are looking at maps and oral histories of what the coast looked like, to try and inspire people to think again about how to re-engage with the coast and protect the coast through biodiversity and avoiding putting concrete down to stop the coast crumbling. And in Wales, we're working with a range of societal partners, including ocean farmers who are growing seaweed for a variety of different purposes, including making clothes, it turns out now, to think about our shared worlds again. And the stories that we tell ourselves about who we are and how we engage with the world and how our ancestors did are coming together to form something very creative across these three different examples, allowing us to find points of correspondence and synergy between all of them that we hope will be able to inspire other people to make some changes or adapt, innovate in their own areas to help with resilience. I think that's enough, unless you want, you're muted.
No, thanks very much, Lucy. That's perfect. And so in a moment, I'm going to ask everybody for their one sentence suggestion.
But can I just say that's so unfair, because I haven't thought of anything, because I was just gassing away.
Saying those now for a moment. But anyway, it's not meant to be the comprehensive solution, but what is one thing that our organizations that we represent can do? So what I do want to mention, and would have mentioned in my presentation, was that we are, throughout the rest of this year, trying to build on what we did at the Summit of the Future, built upon the consortium of partners brought together, some of whom you see there in the background of Lucy's slide or in my slide, but which and which go beyond these partners to several others as well. And we're going to be coming together in different workshop and symposia and consultations contexts or during 2025, and producing a set of recommendations to UNESCO and to the Management of Social Transformations Program, which is an intergovernmental body, try to urge that intergovernmental body to think of the examples that we can bring to them, the recommendations we can bring to them through a co-consultative and co-productive process with a variety of different groups of people, many of whom didn't really have an adequate voice at the Summit of the Future. And so throughout the year, we're going to be holding workshops. This was point of this event today. WAS and Bridges have decided they're going to frame something that will be a consultation of this sort. We'll have takeaways from that, and we're going to be building our recommendations to UNESCO and to MOST on the basis of that. And we're going to be providing further examples of good examples of what is already being done, not just what could be done, but what is already happening. So stay tuned. And in the chat window, I've just put the Bridges. Oh, Lucy, could you put it in there? It didn't come up the way it was supposed to. bridgesearth.org, I think it's supposed to say that. That's the Bridges website, because we will be posting information about the activities that are going to be organized throughout the year. A number of them will be online, such as this. Some others are going to be based in specific places around the world. So stay tuned, and we really hope to have your partnership and participation in a number of these activities, because this is your opportunity to feed into our way to amplify your great ideas and bring them to an intergovernmental context where these ideas can then be promoted for realizing in practice on the ground in different societal contexts. So now I'm going to go over to maybe the order that people appear on my screen in. And Joni, you're the one first that appears in my, so what's your one sentence suggestion?
I would say that the future depends on youth, so we need to listen to them, and we need to look for ways at the practical institutional level and our network levels to figure out how we can listen to what they're saying and build their capacity to lead us into the future.
Great. Thank you, Joni. Rob, you're next on my screen.
For me, I think it's very important to have a platform where different organizations and different people who are working towards, who are working in transdisciplinary ways, who are working in more collaborative, co-creative ways can come in and learn from each other. Because right now in the world, I think this space, this platform is still very scarce, because the world is still very obsessed with the idea of teaching and the idea of disciplines and the idea of being siloed within it. So when we have this platform of free flowing of learning from each other, that's when we may be able to break away from a lot of these silos. So my suggestion, which is something EHC is also working towards, so my suggestion is we need to have more of these platforms where these communications can happen, the learning can happen. Thanks, Stephen.
Thank you, Rob. Over to you, Johnny. You're next in my row here.
Information doubles something like every 12 hours, but the useful lifespan of knowledge, it decreases at an accelerating pace. So I would just like to add one dimension to what I already talked about, the technology enhanced learning. Navigating the space wisely of this information glut is very important. We need to equip our youth to do that. And I believe this is where values-based education comes in. And what everybody spoke in this panel describes that in different ways. So, and also in all the studies of tech-supported learning, the model that is found to be most successful is the hybrid model. So adding the human touch, using technology as the tool, will support us in going where we want to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, Iveta, do you have time to say your sentence before you go?
So I would say we need to center interdependence, not just as a topic, but as a guiding principle in education, because education can teach us that lives are deeply intertwined. Our lives are deeply intertwined with each other and with the planet. And education can play a key role in that. And I wanted to mention before I leave really quickly that we look forward to hosting everybody in May 1st and 2nd at ASU. And the World Academy of Art and Science will also join us at that meeting. Thank you so much. And I look forward to the conversations too in the future.
Thanks, Iveta. Thanks. And I'd like to now turn to, I promised Lucy I'd let you go last, so I'll keep that promise. And I'll ask Karima, please, if she could share her suggestion that she can urge for us to think about trying to realize in
Yes.
practice?
I would just remind why we're learning. We're learning to understand. We learn to understand in the embodied understanding that is cognitive, but not only, that is motor, that is emotional, that is sensory. We also learn to understand each other, the human understanding. So it is the how we learn, not what we learn, that shapes that understanding. And when that how we learn is suffused with the trust in our humanity, and humanity is the more human, more than a human that we are, is what defines me and connects me to our natural world and to each other and to the whole beyond our conscious grasp. So when that's how we learn is suffused with the trusting in our humanity, or in another word, with love, then our learning embodies the peace we seek for. Then our learning manifests, expresses, and reflects our human co-flourishing and societal harmony. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And if I were to add one thing to it, it also generates these things as well. The learning, I think, has the capacity to generate the values that it's based on and disseminate them. So thanks so much. And then over to you, Lucy. Final word from you.
Okay, thank you for leaving me till last. Okay, so I would change what we learn, rather than just that we're learning. I would ask for all schools to educate children to think about the earth as a person, not an object, and that if that happened, we would stop treating the earth in the way that we do.
Thank you, Lucy. Thank you. I kind of gotten away without saying anything myself, so I will say one thing. So I kind of lied when I'll just say that I think the shift from education to learning is significant because we're all learners and we all can be learners. And a lot of what we've been hearing about throughout this entire session is learning from one another and bringing the power of different, otherwise siloed, sort of very positive concentrations of knowledge and understanding to bear more in stronger hybrid forms. So I would say that as educators, a huge part of our mission is to continue to learn and to learn from those who traditionally have been learning from us more and have the humility to be able to accept that they have a lot to teach us. So that's where I'd maybe end with this session. Thanks. I want to thank everybody for what has been, I think, a great conversation. We went 15 minutes over, sorry for that, but hopefully it was worth the extra 15 minutes. And it's the last session of the day, so we had the luxury of doing that. I want to thank the World Academy of Art and Science and all of the co-sponsors there in Turkey for allowing us to organize the session and organizing it together with us. And thanks to all our partners here.
Thank you.
Look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye-bye.